The Strait of Hormuz, narrow, shimmering, and deceptively calm, has once again become the world's most dangerous waterway. In 2026, its turquoise waters are no longer a symbol of trade and prosperity, but of tension, fear, and power. Every ripple carries the echo of missiles. Every tanker that dares to cross it becomes a pawn in a global game of dominance. The conflict between Iran, Israel, and the United States has transformed this ancient maritime corridor into a modern battleground, where oil, politics, and pride collide. The story begins with a spark. In late February 2026, a series of coordinated airstrikes by Israel and the United States targeted Iranian military installations near Bandar Abbas and Keshem Island. The attacks were swift, precise, and devastating. Within hours, Iran responded with ballistic missiles aimed at Israeli positions and U.S. naval assets in the Gulf. The Strait of Hormuz, through which nearly 20% of the world's oil supply flows, was effectively sealed. Tankers turned back, ports fell silent, and the global economy trembled. Oil prices surged overnight. From Karachi to London, from Tokyo to New York, the impact was immediate. Gasoline prices soared, shipping routes were disrupted, and insurance companies refused to cover vessels entering the Gulf. The world realized once again that this narrow stretch of water, barely 40 kilometers wide, holds the fate of nations. Iran declared that any foreign vessel entering the strait without permission would be considered hostile. The U.S. Navy responded by deploying carrier strike groups, destroyers, and reconnaissance aircraft. Israel maintained aerial patrols over the region, ready to intercept any threat. The Gulf became a chessboard of warships, drones, and submarines, each maneuvering under the shadow of escalation. But the conflict was not limited to the sea. Cyberattacks crippled oil terminals in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. Iranian hackers targeted Western financial systems, while U.S. cyber units retaliated by disabling Iranian radar networks. The War of Hormuz was not just physical, it was digital, economic, and psychological. Meanwhile, the people of Iran faced the consequences. Sanctions tightened, inflation soared, and the ripple of war reached ordinary citizens. Fishermen abandoned their boats, fearing naval mines. Traders watched their livelihoods vanish as ports closed. In Israel, civilians braced for missile alerts. In America, the debate over intervention deepened. Diplomacy faltered. The United Nations called for restraint, but neither side was willing to back down. China and Russia urged negotiation, seeing opportunity in the chaos. European nations pleaded for peace, fearing another oil shock that could cripple their economies. Yet Tehran vowed to fight until victory, and Washington demanded unconditional reopening of the strait. The Strait of Hormuz became a symbol, a line between peace and catastrophe. Every missile launched, every tanker sunk, every diplomatic statement carried global consequences. The world stood at the edge of a new era where energy security and military might intertwine. As the smoke thickened over the Gulf, one truth became clear. Control of Hormuz means control of the world's heartbeat. Yep, whoever commands this passage commands the flow of oil, the rhythm of trade, and the pulse of global power. And yet, to understand why this narrow corridor holds such immense significance, we must look beyond the present conflict, back through centuries of history, to the island and the strait that once connected empires, merchants, and civilizations. The Strait of Hormuz has always been more than a narrow passage of water. For centuries, it has been the lifeline of empires, the jewel of merchants, and the coveted prize of conquerors. To understand today's crisis, we must journey back through time, to the ancient island of Hormuz and the strait that has shaped civilizations. Long before modern warships patrolled its waters, Hormuz was a crossroads of trade. As early as the 5th century, Persian kings recognized its strategic value. That the strait connected the riches of the East, spices, silk, and gems, with the markets of the West. Merchant dhows sailed across its turquoise waters, carrying goods from India, China, and Arabia. Hormuz Island itself became a bustling hub, where traders from distant lands mingled, exchanged currencies, and built fortunes. By the medieval era, Hormuz had risen to prominence as one of the most powerful trading states in the Persian Gulf. The Kingdom of Hormuz, centered on the island, controlled commerce from the Arabian Peninsula to India. Its rulers taxed ships passing through the strait, amassing wealth and influence. The city of Hormuz glittered with palaces, mosques, and bazaars, earning it the title, the Venice of the East. But prosperity attracted envy. In the early 16th century, the Portuguese Empire, that seeking dominance over global trade routes, captured Hormuz. They built massive fortresses on the island, turning it into a military stronghold. For more than a century, Portugal controlled the strait, dictating who could pass and who could not. Their cannons overlooked the waters, ensuring that Hormuz remained the gateway to Asia under European rule. The Portuguese reign eventually fell to the combined forces of Persia and Britain in the 17th century. The Safavid dynasty reclaimed Hormuz, shifting trade to Bandar Abbas on the mainland. Yet the strait's importance never diminished. It remained the artery through which the lifeblood of commerce flowed, linking the Persian Gulf to the wider world. As centuries passed, the Strait of Hormuz witnessed the rise and fall of empires. The British Empire, recognizing its strategic value, established dominance in the 19th century, ensuring that their navy controlled the passage. For Britain, Hormuz was not just about trade. It was about securing the route to India, the crown jewel of their empire. In the 20th century, the strait's significance grew even greater. With the discovery of vast oil reserves in Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and the Gulf states, Hormuz became the world's most critical energy choke point. Every tanker leaving the Gulf had to pass through its narrow waters. By mid-century, nearly half of the world's oil supply flowed through Hormuz, making it the heartbeat of modern industry. The Iran-Iraq War of the 1980s brought Hormuz back into the spotlight. Both nations targeted oil tankers in what became known as the Tanker War. Mines, missiles, and airstrikes threatened global shipping, and the United States intervened to protect the flow of oil. The strait became a theater of modern conflict, echoing its ancient role as a contested prize. In the decades that followed, Hormuz remained a symbol of vulnerability. Every flare-up in the Middle East, whether sanctions on Iran, tensions with Saudi Arabia, or US military deployments, reminded the world that this narrow passage could decide the fate of economies. The strait's history is a story of continuity. From ancient trade to colonial conquest, from oil wealth to modern warfare, Hormuz has always been the place where global currents converge. Today, as missiles fly and warships patrol, the echoes of history are unmistakable. The same waters that once carried spices and silk now carry crude oil and liquefied gas. The same fortress walls that once guarded merchants now stand as ruins, watching modern destroyers sail past. Hormuz has always been the backbone of Iran, the gateway of empires, and the fulcrum of global power. The Strait of Hormuz, after centuries of history, now stands at the center of a storm that could reshape the world. Its waters, once filled with merchant dhows and colonial fleets, are today crowded with warships, drones, and oil tankers under constant threat. The echoes of history are alive in every missile fired, every blockade enforced, and every diplomatic statement issued. In the current conflict, Iran views Hormuz not merely as geography, but as its backbone, its shield, and its weapon. By controlling the strait, Tehran holds leverage over the global economy. Every tanker that passes through is a reminder that Iran can, as at any moment, choke the lifeline of oil to Asia, Europe, and America. This is not new. Throughout history, Hormuz has been Iran's bargaining chip, but today the stakes are higher than ever. Israel, for its part, sees Hormuz as a symbol of Iran's reach. The missile exchanges, the naval skirmishes, and the cyberattacks are not just about territory. They are about denying Iran the ability to wield Hormuz as a global pressure point. For Israel, the strait represents a vulnerability in the balance of power, a place where Iran can project influence far beyond its borders. The United States, too, is deeply entangled. For Washington, Hormuz is about energy security and global leadership. Carrier strike groups patrol its waters, ensuring that oil continues to flow. Yet the cost of this presence is immense, financially, militarily, and politically. Every deployment reminds the world that America remains the guardian of global trade routes, but also that its power is constantly challenged. The economic consequences ripple outward. Oil prices remain volatile, shipping companies reroute vessels around Africa, and nations dependent on Gulf energy scramble for alternatives. Inflation rises, markets tremble, and ordinary citizens feel the weight of a conflict thousands of miles away. Hormuz is not just Iran's strait. It is the world's strait, and its closure or disruption affects every household, every factory, every nation. Diplomacy struggles to keep pace with the escalation. The United Nations calls for restraint, but the language of peace is drowned out by the roar of jet engines and the thunder of missiles. China and Russia position themselves as mediators, seeking influence in the chaos. European nations plead for stability, fearing another oil shock that could cripple their economies. Yet the cycle of retaliation continues, each side unwilling to yield. And so, Hormuz becomes more than a battleground, it becomes a mirror of history. Just as Portuguese cannons once dictated passage, just as British fleets once secured empire, today's warships and missiles remind us that control of Hormuz is control of destiny. The strait is both ancient and modern, both a relic of empires and a fulcrum of global power. As the documentary closes, the message is clear. Hormuz is not simply water between Iran and Oman. It is the artery of the world, the place where history and present collide, where trade and war intertwine, and where the future of nations may be decided. The Strait of Hormuz has always mattered, but today in the clash between Iran, Israel, and America, it may matter more than ever before. From ancient crossroads to modern battleground, Hormuz has carried the weight of empires and the burden of wars. Its story is the story of power itself. And as the world watches, the question remains, will Hormuz continue to be a passage of prosperity, or will it become the spark that changes the world forever?